We stand in total solidarity with the Iranian regime's longest-suffering victims, its own people.
California better hold on tight. They're about to see a lot more special agents, a lot more deportation officers in the state of California. If the politicians in California don't want to protect their communities, then ICE will.
Senator Orrin Hatch, the longest-serving Republican in the Senate and a former boxer, is throwing in the towel.
But every good fighter knows when to hang up the gloves.
From the streets of New York City, it is a brand new day, and we are your first live program of the day, 4 a.m. here on the East Coast. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Wednesday morning. I'm Heather Childers. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get right to our top story for you now. President Trump drawing a hard line on Dreamers ahead of a very critical meeting today. His top aides set to sit down with Democrats, and topping the agenda, a deal on DACA and the budget. Griff Jenkins joins us live in Washington, D.C. So, Griff, what can we expect today?
Good morning, Heather. So look, here's the deal. They've got until January 19th to come up with a plan to fund the government and avoid a partial shutdown. But Democrats appear to be holding the line on funding talks over a DACA fix, or what to do with the so-called Dreamers, young immigrants brought here illegally as children facing a March deadline, something President Trump tweeted about yesterday. Here's what he said. Democrats are doing nothing for DACA, just interested in politics. DACA activists and Hispanics will go hard against Dems, will start falling in love with Republicans and their president. We are about results. This comes, as you just saw on the screen, White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney and Legislative Affairs Director Mark Short heads up to Capitol Hill to meet with the big four leaders here, McConnell, Ryan, Schumer, and Pelosi, to try and hammer out a budget deal with immigration front and center. Sarah Huckabee Sanders addressing the White House's main goals.
The president wants to have responsible immigration reform. We've laid out what our principles on immigration reform look like, and that would need to be part of any package that includes DACA. We hope to be able to work with members of Congress to get that done.
But Democrats have been pretty firm in their position, as Minority Leader Pelosi has reiterated last month.
The Dreamers as a discrete piece that needs protection now, and not wait for the entire comprehensive immigration reform to be resolved before we deal with this emergency.
So what to expect, Heather? Well, expect this Capitol Hill meeting to be very important. And it's not just limited to immigration, because they could also bring up things like infrastructure, something the president wants to get done, and could actually attract some bipartisan support, and even health care, as he has tweeted in recent weeks. However, it's obvious that a shutdown would certainly hamper progress on all of these things.
Yeah, January 19th quickly approaching. Griff Jenkins live for us. Thank you, Griff. Well, the Democrats, in the meantime, they say that they are acting in the best interest of Dreamers. But Steve Cortez, member of the President's Hispanic Advisory Council, says that the left is banking on amnesty for their own gains.
Legal immigrants go through a difficult, long process to become American citizens. So they are the most cheated when we allow and tolerate illegal immigration. But to your point, too, of, what's the motive here? Why does the left want so many illegal immigrants? Why do they want amnesty? Let's just be honest about it. They want their votes. They think the more amnesty they grant, the more votes they will get. They're having a hard time in America. They've been in systemic decline, particularly in the state houses of American elections. And they think one way to reverse that is millions of new workers, millions of new who will flood the workforce, and as you said, create an unnaturally low wage to compete with American workers, many of them Hispanic. They don't care about that, but they will also get millions of new votes. So it is a crass political calculus which they've engaged in and which they're pursuing, and let's be honest about it.
Also breaking overnight, a key step towards easing tensions between North and South Korea. A cross-border hotline just reopened between the two countries. It comes hours after President Trump fires back at Kim Jong-un's nuclear button threat. Let's get right to Kelly Wright. He is joining us now with some new developments from overnight. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning to you as well, Heather. As the war of words heats up between North Korea and the United States, South Korea has begun preliminary talks with North Korea. That after North Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un said he wanted to reopen talks with the South to cooperate in the Winter Olympics. Now, the U.S. State Department believes Kim's attempt to talk with the South is an attempt to disrupt the South's alliance with the U.S. The move comes after Kim made a provocative announcement on New Year's Day. You may recall that. He said that a nuclear button is always on his desk. Well, President Trump responded in kind with a very tough tweet stating North Korean leader Kim Jong-un just stated that the nuclear button is on his desk at all times. Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, says North Korea must ban its nuclear weapons in order to have any serious talks with the U.S. and its allies.
We consider this to be a very reckless regime. We don't think we need a Band-Aid, and we don't think we need to smile and take a picture. We think that we need to have them stop nuclear weapons, and they need to stop it now. So North Korea can talk with anyone they want, but the U.S. is not going to recognize it or acknowledge it until they agree to ban the nuclear weapons that they have.
Well, the North remains defiant. A North Korean defector told authorities in Japan, for example, that the regime plans its biggest ballistic missile launch ever on its 70th anniversary, which occurs in September. President Trump says sanctions are having an impact on the North. The Trump administration also adds that China must become more active in persuading Kim Jong-un to end the nuclear program and ease these escalating tensions that we're seeing develop over there. Heather?
All right, Kelly Wright live for us with the latest developments. Thank you, Kelly.
Sure.
Well, some other stories that we're following for you. A massive procession overnight honoring a California deputy who died just days after a violent attack on New Year's Eve. Dozens of fellow law enforcement lining up, saluting as his casket was removed from the hospital. San Bernardino detectives say that 70-year-old Larry Falsey was beaten after an off-duty car crash. The driver of the other car is accused of beating Falsey unconscious, suffering a major blow to the head, leading to his death. Falsey was the oldest deputy serving on the department for 36 years. That suspect is in custody. And an American hero has fallen, killed in the line of duty in Afghanistan on New Year's Day. This happened in the Achin district. That is where ISIS is known to operate. The New Jersey Senator Cory Booker identifying the soldier as Sergeant First Class Mikhail Goling, pictured here, serving in Afghanistan back in 2009. He reportedly immigrated from Latvia 13 years ago and, quote, wanted to serve his new country immediately. He leaves behind a 6-year-old daughter. 4 other service members were also injured. And dangerous winter weather ramping up across the country as a monster storm moves north. Of the unrelenting cold blamed for at least 18 deaths over the last week. Whiteout conditions causing this deadly pileup near Buffalo, New York.
Look at that. This is freaking bonkers.
At least one person was killed in all that, several others injured.
You couldn't see a gosh darn thing in front of you. Everything was blurry. There was a complete whiteout. Right now you could even tell there's complete whiteout. I still can't feel my fingertips just from walking, not even a quarter, from my vehicle.
Even Florida not spared. Right now, flurries are actually falling in northern parts of the state, apparently. Meteorologist Janice Dean is tracking all this for us, and she joins us now with more on what we can expect. Good morning, Janice. Nice to have you here with us.
Thank you. Yes, we have a big winter storm we are tracking, and as you can see, snow along the Gulf Coast, snow in northern Florida, and we're going to see the snow move up the East Coast over the next 12 to 24 hours. So you can see the past 12 hours. To see some snow and a mixing of freezing rain and sleet across North Florida, coastal Georgia in towards the Carolinas. This is a pretty impressive storm that is just getting its act together right now. But looking at it right now, you have light rain in Gainesville, but north of that, that's where we're seeing that wintry mix. So this is going to be a dangerous situation. They don't have this kind of weather a lot in northern Florida. So people are urged to, stay off the roadway, stay indoors. And a lot of kids are not going to school today. Now let's take a look at it. This is the GFS model. This is a really hard one to forecast as we go through the next 12 to 24 hours because it comes so close to the coastline. That's why folks all along the East Coast need to monitor the progress of this storm. Listen to your local officials, of course. Here's the future radar, and as we go further out in time, certainly snow along the coast up towards the mid-Atlantic. How much snow will we get in the big cities? We're going to have to do a sense of now casting in the next 6 to 12 hours and watch to see how close this low tracks inland. Heather, I think it's going to be a close call for places like Long Island, coastal New Jersey, up towards Connecticut. You could easily see 6 to 12 inches. New York City, we're right on the cusp between the warmer air and the colder air, but you know what? It wouldn't be out of the question to see this storm overachieve from some of those forecast totals. So we will be on it. I will be here the next 24 to 48 hours. I'll give you the very latest. Back to you.
Great to have you with us. Definitely people watching for that this morning. Heard people calling it a winter hurricane.
You know what? It is going to be a very powerful storm. One of the most powerful storms, ocean storms, winter storms that we have seen in years.
Yeah. All right. Dangerous stuff. Thank you so much, Janice. Appreciate it. Well, the longest-serving Republican Senator Orrin Hatch will not seek re-election this year. The 83-year-old lawmaker from Utah announcing his retirement after serving since 1977.
When the president visited Utah last month, he said I was a fighter. But every good fighter knows when to hang up the gloves.
President Trump congratulating Senator Hatch on Twitter, calling his career incredible, writing this, quote, "He has been a tremendous supporter and I will never forget the beyond kind statements that he has made about me as president. He is my friend and he will be greatly missed in the U.S. Senate." The announcement clearing the way possibly for Mitt Romney to return to the national stage by running for the soon-to-be vacant seat. Overnight, Romney sparking some rumors that he will in fact throw his hat in the race by updating his Twitter location from Massachusetts to Utah. Well, more than $800 million is still up for grabs after no winner drew the Mega Million jackpot overnight for the 23rd straight time. The prize now surging to $418 million, and your next chance to win is Friday. But tonight's Powerball drawing is valued at $440 million. The combined total of $858 million between the two games is the biggest in history. So possibly join in on that. Well, the time now is about 12 minutes until the top of the hour. And a Fox News alert for you. We are in your home. A man claiming to be an ISIS terrorist posts selfies outside a major New York City tourist attraction. The chilling new call for lone wolf attacks. And more protesters hurt and killed overnight in Iran as the Trump administration calls on the rest of the world to stand up and take notice.
This is the precise picture of a long oppressed people rising up against their dictators.
Why our next guest says that the protests show that Trump's leadership against Iran is working. And Apple's still trying to save face after admitting to secretly slowing down old iPhones, the latest concession to customers. Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. 4:16 in the morning here on the East Coast. A Fox News alert for you. At least 21 people are now dead and hundreds arrested amid the Iranian protests as the Trump administration calls on the UN to take action.
If the Iranian dictatorship's history is any guide, we can expect more outrageous abuses in the days to come. The UN must speak out. In the days ahead, we will be calling for an emergency session. We must not be silent. The people of Iran are crying out for freedom.
We're here now to weigh in is the managing director for the Israel Project, Omri Sarin. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it this
Thanks
morning.
for having me.
Yeah, so lots going on in Iran with these protests. President Trump tweeting his opinion on it, but you say, and as we were just discussing that he also needs to act.
Yeah, you know, the president has been very clear that his support and his administration's support for the protesters isn't going to be rhetorical. It's not, they are going to do something. And there's this weird debate developing right now where everyone is approving of the president's statements but telling him to stay out, or his critics are telling him to stay out. And the president has been very clear that his actions, that his words are going to be backed by actions, and now the question is, what is he going to do? And that's really
what should he do? Should he push for regime change? What should happen here?
So for the first time in a long time, people are talking about how the fundamental problem in Iran is the regime. How we get to solving that problem is an open debate. One of the things that's a no-brainer is the regime is using its resources to shoot people people in the streets, and the United States has enormous leverage to cut off those resources. We know where the IRGC gets their money. They get it from the Central Bank of Iran. We know where the Supreme Leader gets his money. He gets it from his business empire. Yeah. We should sanction those.
Well, and some of that money and some of those sanctions that were lifted came from us.
That's exactly right. So we used to have very, very harsh sanctions on the Central Bank of Iran. Mm-hmm. We used to go after the Supreme Leader's business dealings, but because of the nuclear deal, we lifted those sanctions. But those sanctions now need to be reimposed for human rights reasons. They're using their resources to mow down people in the streets.
Yeah, and is that possibly why we're hearing from former members of the Obama administration now saying, don't do anything, others saying, be quiet?
That's exactly right. You know, they've manufactured any number of reasons for inaction. They say the president shouldn't act because the protests are too small, or because they're hardline, or because it won't work, or because it'll alienate the Europeans. All of those are just excuses not to act because they know that the deal that they worked out has enabled a lot of these atrocities that we've been seeing.
And as we take a look at these protesters are different than back in 2009.
That's absolutely right. These protesters are being driven by economic concerns. In 2009, it was much more political concerns, middle class. These protesters say, listen, billions of dollars have been coming into Iran since the nuclear deal, and we haven't seen any of that. And the reason we haven't seen that, the protesters say, is because the regime has been taking the money that they got and spending it in places like Syria and Lebanon and funding Hamas in Gaza. And the protesters are chanting, enough is enough. The regime is committed to spending its windfall overseas. We have to get rid of the regime.
Yeah, and this is a younger generation. They know that they can have a different life.
Yeah, it's not just a younger generation. You're absolutely right. These people now know they can have a different life because cell phone penetration has increased by something like 40 times since 2009. So these people know they can have a different life. But really what is going on is you're seeing economically disadvantaged people saying, listen, billions have been flowing into this country since the nuclear deal, and we haven't seen any of it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have you back because it looks like that this is not going to end anytime soon.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour, and a Jeopardy contestant loses the lead, watch this, over 2 letters.
Nick, what is Gangster's Paradise Lost? Yes. Our judges have reevaluated one of your responses a few moments ago, so we take 3,200 away from you.
Can you guess why? Did you listen closely? Well, Carly Shimkus is here with the game show Goof that the internet can't stop talking about. Good morning. Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. Faith under fire. Former Congresswoman and one-time presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann says that she'll turn to God to help her decide whether to run for Al Franken's Senate seat.
I fulfilled the calling that God gave me. So the question is, am I being called to do this now? I don't know.
And now Twitter is attacking the potential Republican candidate. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115 is here with the backlash. Good morning, Carly.
Good morning. Yeah, that comment creating a bunch of buzz on social media. Some attacking her for saying she's turning to God for help. One Twitter user, Bryce, tweeting, this Minnesotan hopes Michelle Bachmann does run for Senate because she doesn't have a chance of winning and she'll help House Dems across the state win as well. So I hope God tells her, yes, run, please. Others suggesting that she's crazy for saying she is communicating with God. But conservative commentator Michelle Malkin is now fighting back, tweeting, I've counted 16 liberal journalists so far tweeting snide mockery of Michelle Bachmann. She also added, keep openly mocking people who lean on their faith when making momentous life decisions. Now, there is also some buzz on whether or not Mitt Romney might run for Senate in Utah. And take a look at this. He recently changed his Twitter profile. It used to say he lives in Massachusetts. Now it says that he lives in Holiday, Utah. How about that? A little clue that he might actually be interested.
Yeah, I think that might be a pretty big clue. Well, speaking of clues, this Jeopardy contestant lost a lot of money because of 2 letters.
That's right. He pronounced the word gangsta apparently incorrectly. Take a listen to this.
What is Gangster's Paradise Lost? Yes. Our judges have reevaluated one of your responses a few moments ago, Nick. You said gangsters instead of gangstas on that song by Coolio. So we take 3,200 away from you, so you are now in 2nd place.
Oh my gosh, how brutal is that? People on social media are going nuts over this. One Twitter user writing, imagine going on Jeopardy and losing points for speaking proper English. But the question is that really proper English? Because Jeopardy responded saying that they deleted his winnings because the word gangster and gangsta are both listed separately in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Really?
So
I did not know that. So gangsta.
Yes, it has its very own
listed.
definition, and it's different.
Right. Well, who knew?
I didn't.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carly. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
Well, the time now is about 26 minutes after the top of the hour. And the former sailor convicted of mishandling classified photos now praising President Trump for calling out the double standard that cleared Hillary Clinton of her private email scandal.
She should be prosecuted. She should be put through the same legal system that went after me.
Now
I think he needs to send a clear message to the DOJ under the Obama administration, and he needs to send the same message to Hillary Clinton.
The former Navy sailor jailed for taking a picture inside a submarine, applauding President Trump for calling out a blatant double standard. This comes after Hillary Clinton's top aide failed to follow security protocols. Todd Pirro here now with some fresh calls for a full investigation. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Heather. One of those calls coming from the president. Yesterday in a tweet, President Trump wrote, quote, crooked Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin, has been accused of disregarding basic security protocols. She put classified passwords into the hands of foreign agents. Remember sailor's picture on submarine? Jail. Deep State Justice Department must finally act also on Comey and others, end quote. That sailor is Christian Saucier, who served a year in federal prison for taking photos of classified areas inside a nuclear submarine, photos taken simply to share his excitement for his new job with his family. On the story, Saucier said the felony conviction, along with a dishonorable discharge and loss of veteran benefits, have made it difficult to support his family. But he says the president's tweet renews hope for a pardon, and it calls out what he labels a double standard, a prosecution in his low-level case compared with no prosecution in the mishandling of high-level information by Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin.
It's very difficult for me watching as, this very same FBI that was supposedly, protecting us from people that mishandle classified information. Well, that's what they said was my case, that they needed to set an example. Well, why aren't they setting an example of this egregious violation that Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills did? They had top secret SCI, which is the highest level. I had confidential pictures, which, I'm not trying to minimize what I did. I made a mistake, and that's why I took responsibility. It just so happened that my case was fortuitous for them to prosecute so that they could take the heat off Hillary Clinton.
On Friday, the State Department released some classified emails from Abedin's account on a laptop belonging to her estranged husband, Anthony Weiner. Heather?
All right, Todd Pirro. We're going to have much more on this coming up a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now to another Fox News alert. We are in your home. An ISIS terrorist posting this chilling selfie in front of New York City's Met Museum. Now, the disgusting picture comes after the terror group called for more lone wolf-style knife, bomb, and pressure cooker attacks. The NYPD now beefing up security on some of the busiest streets in the world, installing barriers like this in the city packed with millions of tourists. Now, the plan follows 2 deadly vehicle attacks in Manhattan last year. Well, President Trump's pick to run ICE is calling for a major crackdown on so-called sanctuary cities. Well, the Golden State refuses to help the feds crack down on illegal immigration, and Thomas Homan telling Neil Cavuto that California will see a surge of agents to keep people safe.
If you think ICE is going away, we're not. I'm going to significantly increase our enforcement presence in California. California better hold on tight. They're about to see a lot more special agents, a lot more deportation officers in the state of California. If the politicians in California don't want to protect their communities, then ICE will.
Well, this after Democrat Governor Jerry Brown signing a law making California a sanctuary state effective January 1st. Attorney General Jeff Sessions continuously calling for tougher measures for sanctuary cities, even threatening to withhold millions of dollars of federal grants. Well, Congress is barreling toward an immigration showdown as the Big Four congressional leaders are set to meet on the Hill today. A DACA expected to be a big ticket item, but the president says no deal is made without the wall. Joining me now is the Director of Policy Studies for the Center for Immigration Studies, Jessica Vaughn. Jessica, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good to see you.
So the president is saying no deal without the wall. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, it makes sense. We know that every time an amnesty has even been discussed by Congress, it provokes more illegal immigration. There are so many problems in our immigration system that need to be fixed before Congress should pass an amnesty, that items like the wall, more interior enforcement, chain migration, and the visa lottery, and addressing sanctuaries all have to be part of a package if Congress is going to talk about and enact an amnesty for the people who have DACA.
Yeah, and there are about 800,000 of those, right?
That's right. That's right. Although some of the congressional proposals actually would offer an amnesty to perhaps as many as 2 million people. Really, the core group that is at issue here are those who were given work permits under the Obama administration under the DACA program. And that's about 700,000 people right now.
We have this tweet from President Trump where he said that Dreamers will soon like Republicans better. He said that Democrats are doing nothing for DACA, just interested in politics. DACA activists and Hispanics will go hard against Dems, will start falling in love with Republicans and their president. We are about results. So do you see that happening? I mean, Democrats have said they're willing to shut down the government over this.
Well, yeah, I think we're going to find out just how important this is to the Democrats, that if they actually want to pass some kind of amnesty for people with DACA, they're going to have to also pass some offsetting provisions that the president and that congressional Republicans understand need to see happen, and that includes trimming back chain migration, ending the visa lottery, and improving interior enforcement and border security through the wall. That this amnesty simply is not going to be acceptable to the president or to voters without those offsetting provisions. And it's not just deal making. These provisions are necessary to mitigate the effects of an amnesty, both the cost that we know is going to be enormous for taxpayers, but also to prevent more illegal immigration and to offset the chain migration that, without changes, is definitely going to happen if an amnesty is
provided. We've seen the result of the chain migration, and the numbers, when you take a look at that, it's just staggering. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I would encourage everyone to actually post it online, an entire report that you would put together on all of this. This is your area of expertise, and we really appreciate you being able to join us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour. Should Huma Abedin go to jail for allowing government secrets to fall into foreign hands? Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton joins us live with some new evidence that he says will infuriate Americans. And timing is everything, the new diet that says, eat whatever you want. Well, President Trump taking to Twitter to slam Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin, for forwarding sensitive information to her Yahoo account. The Daily Caller reporter who broke the story, Luke Rosiak, explaining to Fox and Friends First the severity of the problem.
When she first came on board on this new job, they sent her passwords, all the government systems. The first thing she does is turn around and email it to her Yahoo account. In 2012, it's well known that Yahoo has these issues. It's all over the news on a particular date that it's been hacked. 5 days later, she's sending classified information about Syria to Yahoo.
So, should the DOJ step in and investigate? Here now to weigh in is Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Tom, thank you very much for joining us. And we should say, if it wasn't for Judicial Watch, actually, none of this would be happening. So you're actually responsible for this story breaking and people knowing about it.
Yeah, well, it required a lot of litigation by our attorneys and such, and it's been 2 years just trying to get the records that were released last week by the State Department. Remember, the FBI found these records last year, and they're only releasing them now.
And so there's classified information in these emails, which is against the law.
That's right. You're not allowed to take classified information out of government systems or out of unsecure systems, and this is what happened with the Clinton email system that was set up. Abedin testified last year to Judicial Watch. It was Hillary Clinton's idea to set the system up. Abedin was the only other State Department official, as far as we know, who had an email account on this system, and she was sending material, both she and Hillary Clinton, that was classified, and receiving that material as well. And it turns out you had classified material also on Abedine's husband's laptop at the time, the infamous Anthony Weiner. This just cries out for a criminal investigation. The fact that Comey and the rest of the FBI there, presumably Peter Strzok was there, the anti-Trumper FBI special counter-intel person, they just let this go by without any prosecution or any serious investigation.
And take me back to that moment, back during the election when they announced that they did find additional emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop, but then they let it go.
They did, and presumably these 4 or 5 documents that were uncovered on Friday were known to the FBI at the time, but they let it go. And remember, there was other classified material they already knew about, so it was just outrage on top of outrage in terms of the failure of the FBI and Justice Department to follow up on this. And the problem is, Heather, you had the Clinton Lynch Tarmac meeting. You had Andrew Weissman, the number 2 at the FBI, who was conflicted out because of his wife's campaign's funding by a Clinton crony, Terry McAuliffe. And then, of course, you had Comey's machinations. Who knows what he was thinking at the time. But no one can trust that investigation last year. And to me, most Americans hear that there was classified information on the laptop of Anthony Weiner. They're probably thinking, why wasn't there a criminal investigation or any prosecution?
Because that's happened to other people. And we just had a segment on our Todd Pirro was talking about the sailor who was jailed because he took this picture inside of a submarine.
You know, and Mrs. Clinton specifically was warned repeatedly about the use of unsecure systems to conduct government business, and she did it anyway. So forget about this intent or such. She had the intent. She knew what she was doing, and of course none of this would have happened but for having Mrs. Clinton's unsecure system set up in her bathroom or wherever it was. And if I were the Justice Department under President Trump, I would do what the American people elected them to do, which is to reevaluate what went on with respect to the Clinton criminal investigation and reinitiate it to make sure it's been done honestly and fairly, and the American people could be reassured that it hadn't been infected by politics.
So, Tom, my question is, why is that not just a given that that would be happening? Why is there even a question that it wouldn't be happening and that the president has to send out this tweet suggesting that it needs to?
Well, it's a real rule of law crisis over at the Justice Department that they are defending and protecting Hillary Clinton. And Heather, unfortunately, it's no surprise to us. We're litigating in court now against the Justice Department, the State Department, the FBI, the Office of Director of National Intelligence over whether they'll even do a damage assessment as to whether there was national security damage by Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information. This Justice Department is defending Hillary Clinton, saying, well, it wasn't that serious, warranting a damage assessment. I think after learning about what was on Anthony Weiner's laptop, I think the president should demand a damage assessment and tell his appointees to stop with the fear-based decision-making, because I think they're all afraid of Hillary Clinton or taking on the Clinton machine, and enforce the rule of law here.
And not just the classified emails, also showing pay for play as well.
Well, you know, that's the big question. What happened to that investigation? Allegedly, it was going on last year. Was it ever closed? It ought to be reinvigorated or reopened if necessary, because remember, it was the Abedine emails that showed the pay for play, because she was the go-between between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department in terms of the favor game for Clinton Foundation donors who needed favors from the State Department.
Well, Tom, you're always ahead of what's going to happen next, so we look forward to hearing from you more because something else I'm sure is coming down the pike. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Great work. Well, President Trump's tax plan already paying off big, the major bump that airline employees are now seeing, and it is the reason that America sent Donald Trump to Washington.